Your closet is wasting too much space. It's not that it's too big, but more that it's not using the space it has efficiently enough.
So in this video, I'm going to show you how I built the most space-efficient coat closet possible that you can build too, and how this book inspired its design.
In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the second book of the famous Narnia series, the protagonists discover an old wardrobe that turns out to be a secret passage to the mystical land of Narnia, aka the biggest walk-in closet ever. So naturally, I set out to make my closet do the same. Hey babe, did the t-shirts go on the pine tree or the birch? I think a deer ate some of my pants. Unfortunately, it turns out building a portal to a magical world is currently entirely impossible. But luckily, this book has another trick up its sleeve. A standard closet like the one in the entryway of this traditional home, consisting of a relatively small space measuring 3 feet by 2 feet with a bar to hang your coats, can fit around 18 coats comfortably. And for many, this works fine and has been the official design of basically every coat closet since the invention of the coat hanger in 1903, I think, probably. But I live in a tiny home where saving space is a top priority. In fact, a closet this size is already slightly too big for my floor plan. Instead, I need a closet about 30% smaller, and we'd be lucky to fit about 12 coats in a closet like this. And I like coats, so that simply won't do. It's so stupid. So I embarked on a journey to build a coat closet with an unprecedented level of efficiency, capable of storing more coats per inch than any other closet this world has ever seen. So I jumped onto my computer to begin the design process, but I had a few hurdles to overcome first, starting by addressing a little thing that I call closet theory. The problem with standard closets is that despite being able to technically cram a larger number of coats inside of them, they become increasingly difficult to use past a certain point the fuller they get. I like to look at this dilemma by comparing the closet's maximum coat capacity versus the closet's usable coat capacity. For a coat closet like this, and probably your closet too, I'd say the realistic ratio would be around 2 to 1, where the maximum coat capacity is approximately twice as much as the usable coat capacity. I'd consider a closet as within its usable capacity if I can easily remove and insert a coat without much resistance from the adjacent coats. So this closet, which I think is appropriately at its full usable coat capacity of around 18 coats, could theoretically fit about twice as many coats as this, but the more you load your closet beyond its usable coat capacity limit, the more you'll start encountering this situation. Now imagine if you could have a closet where the maximum versus usable coat capacity achieves or even exceeds a 1-to-1 ratio, where the usable capacity is somehow even larger than the maximum. How does that even make sense? Well, it turns out this book has part of the answer. And actually, all books do. Not written in the text, but in the actual form factor of the book itself. If we pretend that each page of this book represents one of my coats, we can kind of see how my new closet idea might work. When the book is closed, there's absolutely no way to insert another page, aka the book is at its maximum page capacity. Yet when the book is opened, you have complete access to each and every page, providing ultimate usable page capacity, and you can easily slide more sheets in between the other pages.
Disclaimer, no Narnia books were harmed in the making of this video. Only one Twilight book.
So I've decided I'm going to build a closet just like a book where every coat hangs like a page. To start, I need to figure out how many coats I can actually fit inside the space I've already designated for the closet, which will be approximately 2 feet by 2 feet, just so I have a reference to see if my final build is even an improvement or not. To do this, I crudely clamped a board inside the standard closet at exactly 2 feet and started filling it up until it became difficult to insert a new coat in with only one hand. I've kind of decided that using one hand is a good criteria to figure out where the usable coat capacity starts to veer into maximum coat capacity territory, because the moment you need a second hand to get a coat in there, your brain tricks you into thinking there's still tons of room in your closet, and the functionality of the closet starts to decline drastically. This is the sneaky danger of standard coat closets, but I'm here to save you from this problem. Okay, so we've managed to fit 10 coats in here with one hand, to the point where the next coat I try to put in gets all bunched up and would require the introduction of my second hand to create a space between the existing coats. Now let's start using 2 hands to cram as many additional coats in here as we can. Sure enough, I was able to cram in just over twice as many coats at 21 coats total. I'm really struggling to get any additional coats in here, regardless of how hard I'm compressing the other coats in the closet. So my goal now is to achieve building a closet that is 2 feet by 2 feet that can fit around 21 coats without requiring the use of 2 hands to hang the 21st coat, while still having easy access to all the other coats in the closet. This might be a long shot, but let's start by designing the mechanism that the coats actually hang onto.
I was originally planning on using a bunch of door hinges and building partial wooden frames for each coat or page to create essentially the giant version of the spine of a hardcover book. But I was concerned about the stresses on so many individual hinges, as every hinge has some level of slop to them, and arranging them in this way would allow that slop to be compiled over the entire spine of the closet. I guess I could try using some piano hinges instead, but I also don't want to spend too much time on this build. And ideally I'd like to find something off the shelf so anyone can build something like this for themselves with relative ease. And surely something like this exists already, right? I mean, books can't be the only things that do this, right?
Oh, look at that. Yes. It's so cool. Oh my God, it's exactly right. Works perfect. Oh, they have a little one too. Wow. Nice.
Intuitively, I knew something like this had to exist already, but I guess I just had to discover it in person. The funny thing is, I've definitely seen this before, and maybe seeing this in the past even subconsciously inspired this whole idea, but for whatever reason, I completely forgot these rug display racks existed. If you can think of any other book-like mechanisms out there, please let me know in the comments. I'm curious how often this kind of thing has been used already. Now, obviously, these racks are way too big for my needs, but at the very least, I think they're a much more elegant way to achieve the result I'm going for than my original plan, and I should be able to back-engineer it down to a more reasonable size. But seeing these racks also made me rethink my Google search terms, and I just did a bit of searching, and sure enough, I think I found the perfect thing.
This is a wall-mounted blueprint hanger that I found on Amazon, and it's literally a mini version of the rug rack. It's about $150, which might seem a bit on the pricier side, but when you consider my initial plan to build the whole closet from scratch, the door hinges alone would have costed about half that. And then I'd need to factor in all the extra lumber and the fact that I need to completely redesign how to build the cabinet in the first place. This option just seemed like a no-brainer to me. I'll still have to modify a standard cabinet a bit to get the full functionality of this system, but I think even on its own, this could be a really cool way to hang things efficiently in your home. To build the actual cabinet that will house this rack, normally I would use some 3/4 inch material like plywood or MDF, but honestly I really don't want to spend too much extra money on this project, and I've already got some 2x4s, this really thin hardboard material, and this random door lying around that I can use instead. And I'm going to see how well I can do with that, but if you were to build this yourself, I think going the plywood route would be a lot better.
So the plan is, I'm going to build a couple 2x4 frames, which I will face with the thin hardboard material to make up the general shape of the closet. I think this is a good time for me to admit I do not consider myself a very good furniture builder, and I am definitely cutting some corners here, as this is still technically a proof of concept, so I won't be going into too much detail about how I built this cabinet. At the end of the day, there are plenty of YouTube channels out there that do a much better job of showing the art of fine furniture building, and like I mentioned earlier, this isn't even how I'd normally prefer to build a cabinet, so I'm not expecting to win any awards for this part of the build. My main goal with this build is to show you a new spin on the functionality of a standard closet or wardrobe, and I think this slightly janky construction will be more than good enough to portray the concept I am going for. In general, I do love building things, but my real passion is for coming up with unique solutions to everyday problems, and that is ultimately what I want to be showing off on this YouTube channel. Whether it's coming up with a new way to build a lighting rig for bands, creating a device for sifting cat litter, or designing a more efficient coat closet, the one consistent theme throughout all these videos is that I am always trying to identify the areas of my life that need improvement, and instead of being a normal human being and trying to adjust my actions to suit the world I'm living in, I find it much more satisfying to try and engineer my way out of these problems. If you're anything like me, I hope these videos can give you some inspiration to try and come up with your own unique solutions to the everyday problems in your life. But at the very least, I hope these videos can be a good source of entertainment. But let's get back to the build montage. Here I am beginning to install the panels into my home, starting with fastening this 2x4 plumb to the wall, followed by the first main panel. At this point, I wanted to see how the blueprint rack fit into the panel, and I actually did end up having to add a couple more 2x4 spacers behind the rack because it was set a bit too far back, and the arms would hit the frame before swinging out all the way. Other than this, it fit great. Now, one of the other unique things about this closet is that in order to gain full access to the coats, there needs to be two doors, one on the front and one on the side. This will make more sense in a minute, but I had to add hinges to this second panel piece so that it can act like the side door for the closet. Once the hinges were mounted, I could attach the panel to the 2x4 that I installed originally. A good friend of mine who is an actual cabinet builder gifted me these really nice maple veneered MDF panels that I used to build some smaller storage compartments for above and below the coats. Unfortunately, these panels were too small to build the rest of the closet out of them, but they were the perfect size for these compartments. Due to the magic of editing, I was able to make it look like I installed this upper storage compartment gracefully, but in reality, it took me about 15 minutes of pure struggling to position this in a way that I could finally fasten it to the frame. I then had to cut my actual door down to size. I had to add some new blocks of wood into the cavities left behind before installing new hinges and mounting it onto the closet. Unfortunately, this door ended up being a bit more warped than I would have liked, so it was a bit of a hassle to get it sitting properly, but eventually I got it looking alright. I added some trim to the front to hide the ugly screw holes. This trim was also super warped, but luckily very easy to straighten out by nailing it to the frame. I then added the strike plate for the front door onto the side door, and I wasn't sure if when closing the front door the latch would just push the side door open instead of latching into this hole, so I also mounted this little roller latch to the top of the closet for the side door to hold onto, and it worked surprisingly well. Finally, I needed to figure out how to actually hang the coats onto the blueprint rack arms. Originally, I tried using some scrap wood bolted onto the flat bar on top of the arm, but it turns out these arms aren't at all straight and it looked pretty wonky. So I ended up 3D printing some clamps that grab onto the thin bars of the arm instead, and that worked out much better. I'm happy to make the 3D print files for these available for free on my Discord channel if anyone is interested. All that's left is a nice coat of paint, and
this is the finished closet, complete with green paint and brass hardware. We have a drawer for shoes on the bottom here, and below that, a mini garage for Victor, our robot vacuum. This door opens up to reveal the front of our coats once they're hung up, as well as this top cubby here, which we will put hats, gloves, and other random things like that. This sidewall also opens up to give you full access to all of your coats once the closet is full. And of course, the reason we're all here, we've got the modified blueprint storage rack with 12 individually articulating arms capable of holding 20 pounds each. I'm quite happy with how this closet has turned out so far, but does it function as well as I was hoping? Remember, during our standard closet test, we determined a closet of this size had a maximum coat capacity of only 21 coats, and a usable coat capacity of a mere 10 coats. So if this closet can hold 24 coats, or just 2 coats per arm, we've already exceeded that maximum. So let's test this thing. I'm going to start by hanging as many coats as I can using the one-hand hanging criteria to see what the usable coat capacity is of this closet. My goal was to be able to hang at least 21 coats this way, but anything over 10 coats is technically an improvement in terms of usable coat capacity. All right, so I was easily able to hang 1 coat per arm, or 12 coats total in the closet using only one hand, so this is already technically a success. Obviously, these coats here are now sticking out of the front of the closet, but with a little bit of pressure from the front door, we can easily compress the coats to fit inside the closet. But let's keep trying to add more coats to find the absolute usable coat capacity of this closet.
Okay, so I was able to get 12 more coats on here for a total of 24 coats hung with using only one hand. Now, I will admit it was getting pretty difficult near the end there, but this is still technically in usable coat capacity condition because I can still grab a coat out of the middle here, and with a little bit of jiggling, I can still hang it back up without using a second hand. I could theoretically continue to add more coats into the closet with one hand by just adding coats to the end here, where I wouldn't have to deal with trying to squeeze a coat in between two other coats. But for the sake of fairness, I won't count that as adding a bunch of coats on this end would make the rest of the coats less accessible. So for the sake of the usable coat capacity for this closet, I would say about 24 coats would be the limit here. And comparing to the usable coat capacity of only 10 coats for the standard closet, this is a huge improvement. But of course, we have to see if this even shuts when it's this full. No problem. So earlier in the video, I did mention that this closet has the potential for its usable coat capacity to exceed the maximum coat capacity. And I do think we were able to achieve this here, kind of. For one, our standard closet test had a maximum coat capacity of 21 coats, and we were able to just determine here that this closet has a usable coat capacity of 24 coats. So right there, we are exceeding the maximum coat capacity with this new usable coat capacity by 3 coats. But to drive this point home even further, if I open this side door here, while keeping this front door clamped shut, you can see that while this front door is applying pressure on all of these coats, it would be extremely difficult for me to add another coat in here without opening the front door to relieve the pressure. This is basically how a standard closet works already, and I hope this portrays just how effective this system actually is. There is one problem though. Despite not being able to add any more coats into this closet when this front door is shut here, aka this closet is kind of in a artificial maximum coat capacity right now, when the front door is opened, I can continue to add so many more coats. So let's explore this now. All right, so I added one more coat for each arm of the closet, this time using both my hands to help get the coats in there. Again, with some pressure on the front door, I was able to shut this no problem, and you would be none the wiser that there are now 36 coats inside this small closet. 36 coats was actually the maximum coat capacity that I could fit in the full-sized 3-foot standard closet. This is probably what I would consider the maximum coat capacity of this closet, just because I'd be concerned about breaking something if I added any more. But that being said, if I really wanted to push this thing, I think if I were to take all the closets out and start adding them by filling each arm to its maximum one at a time, starting from the back, I could probably get quite a few more coats in there. Unfortunately, I have completely run out of coats. This closet certainly requires a specific room layout to accommodate the 2 doors like this, but this closet can fit an absolutely ridiculous number of coats. So let's just check the goals we made earlier in this video just to see how we did. So for 21 coat max capacity, we blew that out of the water. Single-handed operation, I was able to get 24 coats in there without the use of my second hand, so that's a success. Access to all coats. I'd argue this closet gives you better access to your coats than just about any other closet out there. 2 foot by 2 foot interior dimensions. Well, I may have cheated a little bit here, but let me explain. These panels here were actually 24 inches wide exactly already, and I had a little bit of extra room here, so I did end up widening this out by a couple extra inches just so I didn't have to cut these down really. But also it couldn't hurt having a couple extra inches in the closet. Also because of the fact that I did a 2x4 frame construction on this and I left the frame hollow on the inside, I am getting a few extra inches this way, but it's not really sacrificing from the overall size of the closet. But for the sake of being fair, I don't think I technically achieved the 2 foot by 2 foot interior space requirement. However, I do think if I did stick to those dimensions a little bit more accurately, this still would have been a huge improvement over a standard closet. All in all, I think this was a really successful build. I learned a lot, and I think these blueprint storage racks are the real star of the show here. I'll likely take most of these coats out and keep this closet at about 20 coats full just for the best user experience, but it's nice to know that I can put almost double that amount in here if I needed to. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing and sharing this video to anybody you think might get a kick out of this. And that concludes the story about how a book inspired me to build a more efficient coat closet. While I admit I would have loved to harness the true magical properties of this fantasy book for you, there's something alternatively magical about working through a problem and coming up with a unique solution. Whether this specific solution is helpful to you or not, I hope at the very least you enjoyed going on this journey with me. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Stay out of here. You stay out of here.